Early last year, such a long time ago now, I took a look at 4 platform games from the 90s that were, in their own ways, genre-defining. There was Another World, which brilliantly blended cinematic visuals with action-adventure platforming. The confusingly named James Pond 2 codename Robocod, which was a delightful romp filled with pits, pratfalls, and penguins. Superfrog, a game about a frog who becomes super thanks to the revitalizing powers of a very specific, very orange energy drink. And Prince of Persia in Space, better known to the world as Flashback, probably because that's what it's actually called. At the time the episode went live, 2 of the games already had updated versions out, and in fact Another World has since been released for more systems, including the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One, which is nice. I won't be looking at those because I don't actually have any of the newer systems. This is not my Wii U. In fact, this isn't even my couch or my coffee table. This isn't my apartment. I don't live here. The very day this episode went live, Ubisoft announced a brand spanking new remake of Flashback, and not long after that, Team 17 followed suit with the announcement of Superfrog HD. Both games were released in August of that year, but are either of these remakes any good? No. Okay, alright, let's start with Superfrog. We'll start with Superfrog because television has taught me that you can keep an audience hooked by holding on to the good stuff for later. Though don't take that as an indicator of quality, it's just, no bugger cares about Superfrog except for me and, probably a bunch of herpetologists. The 1993 original is a fusion of Mario and Sonic design styles, a wonderful blend of fast-paced platform action and superb level design. Initially released for the Amiga, it was later ported to MS-DOS, where they didn't quite get the physics right, but it's basically good enough. This version is available on GOG.com, and it's well worth the money. Fans like me had been clamouring for a sequel or remake for years, and in 2013, Team 17 answered our prayers, and I wish they hadn't. Dropping first for the Vita and the PlayStation 3 before making an ill-advised jump over to PC, Mac and Linux, Superfrog HD takes the clever level design and smooth motion of the original and basically shits all over it. The levels have been given a half-hearted redesign, incorporating elements from the original whilst adding new bits and occasionally nerfing older ones. The original game required you to collect a certain number of coins to unlock the exit, but that requirement is gone here, severely reducing the challenge. That's okay though, because they've added an artificial challenge in the form of the game's wonky camera, which zooms in and out seemingly at random and in a manner that can actually make you feel a little motion sick. Watching this game's vivid cartoony graphics constantly moving towards and away over and over is incredibly disorienting. It's like trying to have sex while watching Nickelodeon. God, I miss Nicktoons. The original levels are in there as unlockable extras, but they offer no sense of progression, as the only way you can actually unlock them is by playing the redesigned levels. The art style's a ruddy mess too, a bizarre hodgepodge of Flash-style flats loosely inspired by the box art for the original release of the game, and sorely lacking in the charm and revelry of the source material. I imagine this would look pretty at home on a mobile screen, and indeed the game has been released for Android and iOS devices, but on a large high-def television it just looks miserable. I know a lot of work goes into making video games, teams of artists working long hours for not a lot of money and so on, but the game just looks unfinished, as though it somehow made it to market with placeholder graphics. Write a joke about that here later. Wait, hang on. The whole thing feels like more of a fan-made remake than the work of a studio with almost 25 years experience making games. You'd be better off buying the original, which is not only a superior product, but is also about half the price. On to Flashback then, and Ubisoft brought together the team who worked on the original, which is convenient because they all happen to work for Vector Cell, whom you may recall made, what was that other game that they made? It was Amy, which has a Metacritic score of 25%. That's not a promising start. Imagine George Lucas deciding to remake The Empire Strikes Back from scratch, and now stop imagining that. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. That was cruel. I don't know what I was thinking, please stop crying. Please stop crying. I'm so sorry. So sorry. Like the original, this game puts you in the shoes of Conrad Hart, a man with amnesia on the run from the aliens he's discovered are invading the Earth by replacing people with other people who aren't actually people, but who look like people. It's a very, very loose retelling of the original, taking liberties with the story and the locations, but none of that really matters because literally every other aspect of the game is so wretched you won't get far enough into the thing to care about the janky ragdoll physics, the terrible controls, and the embarrassingly poor dialogue and voice acting.
What? Wait. Oh, great. You didn't even tell me. Awesome sauce.
That's such a bad read. I don't know if it's bad voice acting or bad direction or if there was supposed to be some actual sauce in this scene and it was cut for time, but how the hell do you fuck up such a simple two-word phrase? How do you... Probably the same way you implement some of the wonkiest, most broken controls and physics ever experienced in a 2D platformer. If you've ever played the original Flashback, you'll know that the controls are pretty solid. Rigid, yes, but easy to understand. Conrad has a handful of movements he can perform, and as all movement in the game is essentially mapped to a grid, predicting how Conrad will move in response to your controller input is easy peasy. This makes deciding what you're going to do incredibly simple, which is good because as the original Flashback only displays one screen at a time as opposed to scrolling like the remake, you need to be able to think tactically. The rigid controls and that invisible grid system help with that, make it easier for you as the player to plan out your next move. The remake eschews this in favour of a more fluid control system, and I use the term fluid in the same way one might describe a bowel movement after a 3-course meal at Denny's, as our intrepid hero now moves in a sloppy, buggy, poorly animated and often unpredictable manner. There's also almost no real sense of danger. Enemies drop health when they die, so you're almost never going to die during combat, and you don't die from long drops like you did in the original where you would die instantly. No, instead, Conrad just shakes off falls from a great height like they're nothing, like he's forgotten where he put his car keys before remembering they were in his coat pocket the whole time. Many games are built on a foundation of risk versus reward, and that's what makes them so satisfying. You take a risk to collect some rare trinket or power up, and if you're successful, you're rewarded with, the thing you were trying to get. There's none of that in Flashback 2013. It's all reward, no risk. Unless you count the risk of actively paying money for the game, because that yields exactly 0 results. Sick burn on me, because I bought the game twice. So that was that. The original is lauded for its controls, its challenging gameplay, and its originality. It's literally one of the defining platform games of its generation. This, however, is a thoroughly watered-down experience with almost no redeeming qualities. They did include the original as an extra, but surprise, surprise, they managed to fuck that up too. It has no music and can only be played in this bullshit arcade cabinet display that's far too small, which is even more stupid because Flashback isn't an arcade game. It was never released in arcades. What led them to that decision? What led them to any of the decisions they made when they were working on this disaster of a remake? In the end, that awesome source line becomes a sort of a microcosm of the entire game. It's a simple idea that on paper shouldn't be too difficult not to fuck up. And yet, not only did they manage to fuck it up, they fucked it up in every conceivable manner possible. And unlike Superfrog, where the original can still be bought and played, this is the only option you have if you want to buy Flashback, original or otherwise. At least it's, your only legal option. I mean, I certainly wouldn't condone, say, downloading a Sega Genesis emulator and playing it there, or finding the original PC version files and running them in Reminiscence for Windows, Mac and Linux. I wouldn't condone such a thing. That would be crazy. So, what we've learned here is if you're planning on remaking a beloved platform game from the 90s, then, basically, don't
Just don't. Please don't. Please don't. Just don't. Please don't. Please don't.